You're listening to episode 20 of the Confident Rider podcast with Jane Pike. If this is your first time here, welcome. Hit subscribe and we can hang out every week. Over the past few weeks, there has been an influx of new babies into Team Joyride, which has been so lovely to see. And consequently, there's been a lot of discussion around the challenges involved to returning to riding after you've had kids. Having two little boys myself, I am very aware of how tough this territory can be to navigate and thought it would be really cool to have like a round table discussion with other mums so we can talk about our experiences and share our thoughts on the subject. I also open this up on social media, and to those of you who follow my Confident Rider pages, thank you so much for your input. Some of you also called in and left a message on my website, which I have included in this episode also. That is a really cool thing we can now do. If you jump on my website, confidentrider.online, and glance to the side, you'll see there's an option to leave me a voice message. And I totally welcome any questions or contributions that you have, and they may also be included in future episodes, so record away. Today I'm speaking with Ellie O'Brien, who is an equestrian coach from Finesse Equestrian, and Sarah Attwater, host of the Healthy Horse and Happy Hound podcast. They both have children and we have all got together to share our stories. So let's get started with the episode now. I'm here today with the fabulous Ellie O'Brien and the equally fabulous Sarah Attwater, and we are going to blow the conversation up around all things returning to riding and renegotiating what your riding life looks like after you've had a baby. Welcome, guys. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
I posted as well on my Facebook page asking everyone out there to share their thoughts and experiences in terms of the challenges that come up and everything that has been experienced out there, because it's such a melting pot of different stories depending on your own baby and what their sleeping habits are like and your family situation and everything and anything in between. So should we start with some introductions? Ellie, I thought because you have the newest baby, we can start with you and take it from the top. Do you want to tell us about your family and where it is you're at?
Yeah, sure thing. Well, thank you for having me on today. It's nice to be able to share, I guess, a little bit. I am a horse trainer and also a mum. And I've got my latest addition to the family, who is just 6 weeks old, a little boy, our first boy to the family. And I also have an 11-year-old daughter as well. So it's been quite interesting becoming what feels like a first-time mum again, almost, between.
How has it been transitioning into the whole newborn period for you? Did you have a whole set of expectations coming into it about what would happen?
Yeah, I guess so. Well, our minds are quite clever, aren't they? And I remember all the really great parts about when my daughter was little, mostly about how I would feed her, put her back to sleep, go and ride a horse, go back, feed, go and ride another horse. And I forgot about the witching hour and the countless...
Are you sure that wasn't a book you were reading?
Yeah. So it's been a little bit of a shock to the system.
It's so true though. I think especially when there's that gap, I know that my littlest one, Tommy, is 3 and Flynn has just turned 8. It took me about 5 years to make the decision that I would be okay with the lack of sleep and I could do this again. Hence the gap in between. Sarah, how about you? Who are the members of your brood?
So I have got 3 boys. I've got Ashton, who you can probably hear in the background. And then I've got another boy, Hudson, who's 6, and Harper, who is 8. But a bit of my background is that I rode when I was a teenager, and then I sold my horse and went and did the uni, got married, had baby thing. And then I got back into it after I had my second son, and I think it was about maybe 8 months or something. And I got an off-the-track thoroughbred, sight unseen. So really smart decision there. But in saying that, he's been my biggest teacher. He's he's taught me that I have to change the way I approach horses and being a horse person and empathy and, you know, looking at it from the horse perspective. So, yeah, at the moment I'm just doing hobby stuff, but I'm also doing a podcast which is Healthy Horse, Happy Hound. I always get that mixed up. And I'm studying equine and canine naturopath course. So I've only just started, and yeah, so that's my journey at the moment. I just really want to help people and their animals.
Really cool. I can't wait to listen to your podcast as well. I'm going to dive in. I'll link up to everyone's podcast at the end because Ellie has one too that's amazing. So I have, like I just mentioned, my littlest boy is called Tommy and my biggest boy is called Flynn and he is 8. And it's been a bit of a wild ride for me, going from someone who has been incredibly independent and autonomous with their time. That was the biggest shock coming into having Flynn, because all of a sudden I had to rely on someone else in order to be able to do anything. And I remember that feeling of, I don't know if claustrophobia is the right word, but this intense reliance that used to actually drive me a little bit crazy. And I had a really rough pregnancy with both of my boys, especially with my second child, Tommy. I had hyperemesis and had to be medicated to even get off the couch. So it was really intense. And the funny thing is that coming into the second pregnancy, I said to my husband really early on, it was like, it must have been 4 or 5 weeks, like I knew that I was pregnant at that point. And I said, don't worry, babe, I'm going to rock this pregnancy. And literally from then on, I was over a bucket the entire pregnancy. Like I had all these dreams. I even enrolled in a classical in-hand training program. I was like, I'm going to do all this in-hand work and it's going to be amazing. And I'm going to be like this juicy peach out there working my horse. And it was so far from the juicy peach vision that I had in my mind. I couldn't believe it. So yeah, I kind of derailed fairly early on and had to quickly adjust to that program after that. But yeah.
It's very relatable. I remember my last pregnancy was the worst, and yeah, I couldn't get off the couch. I was so sick, and yeah, I had my thoroughbred that I wanted to get down to and play with and stuff, but yeah, it was almost like as soon as the sperm met the egg, it was in my life.
We have our own plans now. We're taking over.
Yeah, but, you know, you're talking about the claustrophobic side of it. I think it's because these little people, and it probably starts when you're pregnant as well, they have this intense reliance on you, and it's as soon as you've got to be on 24/7, and as soon as you wake up, they demand so much of you that you almost lose your self identity, or you know what I'm trying to say. And you just become this person that is here to look after these little people and not who you are as an individual. And it can be you can feel like you're drowning a little bit.
Absolutely. How's it been for you, Ellie, going into that new chapter at the moment? I mean, you're in the midst of it now.
Yeah. What I found in these first few weeks, I guess, is being present with my baby, because he knows if I'm not being present with him. And so it's kind of funny because I'm finding that the things I've been practicing with horses and horse training are sort of coming through into being a mum again to a small baby, especially because we were out with my daughter being 11. She's quite independent and doing her own thing, and she can get her own breakfast and lunch and all of that sort of stuff. And now being right back to, like you say, being totally there for another human being to keep them alive. And I see lots of new mums kind of celebrating, like, whoa, I kept my baby alive. And it really does feel like that.
Yeah, I showered today.
Oh, showering, such a luxury.
My partner, he's like, I'm pretty sure it's you that's making us have these really high power bills because of your long showers. I'm like, but you don't understand. It's like the only time in my day that I get to be by myself.
Yeah, cheaper than therapy. Oh, that's so funny. And the sleep situation, I think for me, that was intense. Like reflecting back now, especially over that first 12 months with Flynn, he was awake every 45 minutes to an hour. And I look back at my horsing adventures at that time, and I was unreasonably anxious to the point of things would make me quite panicky. And what I know now is I was just so chronically sleep deprived that my nervous system was like firing, constantly. And I beat myself up about that, especially, being in the field that I am. I'm like, what is happening? But the hormones and the sleep, like, you just cannot underestimate what it is that your body is going through, and that necessity to be kind to yourself at those times. Because, I mean, I don't know what you guys think, but the problem that I had was that I was doing so little for myself at that point, that even during the windows that probably you should go to sleep, like if they're having a nap for whatever brief period that is, you should probably sleep, but there's also this desperation to just do something, anything that's not related to being a mum. And so you forgo that potential sleep as well to do that thing, and it sort of creates this compounding cycle that feeds on itself.
Totally. Do you know what I did this morning? So I've been wearing my baby Jack a little bit in the wrap, and so I got him off to sleep in the wrap, and I found a Moro bar in the car that I had actually bought for my partner, but I was like, oh, Moro bar, and then as I was carrying it into the house, I was like, deep fried Moro bar. And then so I Googled how to make a deep fried Moro bar, and I did that and sleeping like I probably should have been.
Living the dream. I mean, a deep fried Moro bar, that's got to see you through a good 72 hours.
Oh yeah, that was breakfast.
That's so classic. That's so classic. So with 3 boys, Sarah, how's the sleep thing for you? Have you not slept for a decade now? How's that?
So the first 2, because I breastfed all of my kids apart from the last one. As I said, he's pretty much the devil child, as you can hear him in the background. But he had a lot of issues. So he had a tongue tie, lip tie, dairy intolerance, silent reflux. He has a high palate, so he couldn't breastfeed properly. And I've got a really supportive partner. So he actually slept on the couch for the first year and he basically just brought him in to feed, so I could feed him, and then he topped him up. And yeah, so with the last one, I got probably more sleep than I did with the other kids. I find sleep deprivation is my number one trigger. So I have suffered from anxiety and depression in the past, and I had postnatal depression as well. And that was something we talked about when we went in to have the 3rd child. And we were like, okay, so what can we do to make this easier on the whole family? And Sam, who can operate on less sleep, was like, okay, I will take the night shifts for you so you can, operate. And as a mother, I think you need to be the best person that you can be for yourself so you can give that to your kids. And if you give up everything for the kids and you're miserable, then the kids feel that anyway, and your horses. Everything in your whole life, it reflects on your emotions and everything. So I'm just super, super lucky. I've got an awesome husband that helps a lot with that stuff.
It's very cool. I think that there is this, I don't know if it's like an ideology that we buy into or what it is, because there's definitely a theme that it's been like the woman's role up until relatively recently, so there has to be this kind of cultural baggage that follows us. Not that we're going to get into that now, but we can get really sacrificial about how it is we go about things. And I know for ages, like, I wasn't getting any sleep, and my mum-in-law offered to have Flynn. She lives on the same property as us, and I was so against it because I felt so guilty that if she would have him, I was somehow letting him down, and that's not what I should be stronger than this, all of those sorts of things. But you can't fight it, and it's really, like you say, we need to get better at not only looking after ourselves but actually asking for help, because we're not designed to do it by ourselves. And I think that's part of the problem that comes up.
And historically, like, you look at tribes and the mother, they take the baby from the mother and let the mother recoup and recover from labour. And they say it takes a village to raise a child, and we've lost some of that in the modern day era, I believe.
Yeah.
And we have so much expectations on mothers, even just comments that people say, like, even if you only want to have one child, oh, you're going back for another one?
Yeah.
And there's the pressure there. Or are you going back to work? Are you just a stay-at-home mum?
Yeah.
Come on, guys, what can I do to feel like I'm fulfilling this role in a positive way? And for me, it's been letting go of other people's judgments and realising that it really doesn't matter. And what matters is a happy family.
Yeah, absolutely. It flips around in the other direction too, because I know that I was working and definitely like in the full swing of it when I had Tommy. And now my husband is the stay-at-home dad and I'm the working one. And the problem people have with that is really quite interesting to look at. Like Giles gets asked, oh, is that all you're going to do? Like, what are you actually going to do? And it's like, well, I'm doing this. Like, is that not okay? And then for me, there's, and not with everyone, of course, but just kind of underlying threads of implication about the time you spend away or how do you do this, this and this. And it's been a really tricky thing to negotiate because it does pluck at triggers that already exist inside you. Like you're already wondering, am I spending enough time with them? Like, am I a good mum? You know, all of those things that you want to be. So if it gets highlighted even in a really unfair way, it hurts, you know, it hits a spot and you have to sort of negotiate that within yourself to move through the other side of it.
Yeah. That mother's guilt as well.
It's ripe.
It is so bad. And it just like you try to get rid of it, but it just, you feel guilty for everything. Even if you're doing a great job, you know, like even with my son, he's in foundation or prep. I don't know, they keep changing the names of it, but the first year of primary school and having the third, you're trying to organise all the kids and balance work and family and friends and your own, say if you've got a side hustle as well, and you just feel guilty about everything you're doing as you're doing it. And that includes being at the paddock. You feel guilty with the time that you spend there because you're like, wow, should I be with the kids? And you feel guilty when you're at home because you're like, oh, I really should be doing stuff with my horse. And it's that fine balancing act of trying to be okay with where you're at.
Totally. How do you find it, Ellie? Is that something that comes up for you?
Yeah, I think my biggest one is probably the asking for help side of things, and because I think my personality type is a little bit to just like pile everything on and I'll be okay. I think like for me, it's probably I don't realize that I've got in a bad place until it all starts to fall apart, I guess, because I just like I guess I'm a doer, so I just like keep on piling on more things.
Yeah. Yeah, I have the little formula for asking for help, which I picked up from somewhere and I can't remember who to attribute it to, but I've changed it mildly, but it's to ask early, ask often, and ask kindly. And I think the more often you ask and the earlier you ask, the less it gets to situations where you feel like you might implode in some way because it just is so easy to pile up, especially when you don't have that emotional bank account filled up, you know, with sleep or with good eating or with actually being able to take time out for yourself. It's easy to get into that depletion mode. Hey.
Yeah, that's right.
But, the guilt for me, I actually don't feel guilty at all about riding. I don't know if that's because I have a mum that used to like run for the hills and ride her horses and that's been modelled to me. But I had this thing coming into it where I really fiercely defended the fact that I was going to maintain riding. And there were times where it didn't happen in the way that I wanted it to happen. Like I had to turn my horses out for a period or, you know, there were big chunks of time where I didn't do much with them. But I never let myself go to the place where I equaled that to having to give up. I was just like, at this moment, I'm not able to do this, but it's going to come back. That's also the gift of more than one child, in that when I had Flynn, it felt like that newborn phase was my new life, you know, like this is how it's going to be forever. And when I had Tommy, I recognized that I felt like that with Flynn, but it actually got easier and changed as they got older, of course. So there's that comfort in knowing that everything's cyclic and you will be moving through to the next point.
Yeah, that's quite interesting. It's even Dean and I, my partner, we've been talking about like, you know, some of the nights when we're at that time of day when all they want to do is cry and you kind of can't settle them in some way, and we just kind of go, oh, well, you know, it's just a phase. Like, it's not going to be like this forever. That mindset makes it easier, and one, probably not getting caught up and emotional in that moment, but two, like knowing that, yeah, you're going to get through to the other side and be able to get back some sort of normalcy in your life.
Yeah, exactly. I did a survey, is kind of not quite the right word, but I did this mini psychological survey that nobody knew I was conducting of cool parents in the area. So I looked at the parents of friends of mine who'd already left home and who had maintained a sense of radness ever since, which meant like they had their stuff going on. They obviously had really tight family connections, but they weren't broken by the fact their children had left home. You know what I mean? I was like, wow, those are really cool parents. And what I noticed about them was that they all had their own thing. And their children really respected what it was that their parents did. Like they saw them as autonomous beings, not just there to kind of serve their every need. So part of the horse thing for me was, you know, I really want my children to have a passion. It doesn't have to be my passion, but to have a passion that gives them as much energy and enjoyment as my horses give me. And for whatever reason, that was a thread that kept me above water mentally as I kind of navigated those early years, especially because it is tough. It can be really tough. And it's completely different to not also loving it at the same time.
Yeah.
You know, like it's simultaneously amazing and mind-blowing and you wouldn't give it up for everything, and like drowning and really difficult, and how am I ever going to get through to the next day?
A balancing act, that's for sure.
It really is. I remember having a conversation with someone, Flynn must have been less than 6 weeks old, and I was discussing his sleeping habits with them. And they said, oh yeah, he was 1 year old before my sister's little boy slept for her. And I was thinking at that point, a year? Like, how am I going to survive a year like this? It seemed impossible.
It's almost like that's the meanest thing you've ever said to me.
Yeah. Take that back.
Yeah.
So my name's Loretta. I've just joined the Joyride programme, which I'm loving. Thank you, Jane. I just got your message about motherhood and horses, so I thought I'd add my 2 pence worth. So I've got 2 small children. One's 3. I've got a 3-year-old daughter and a 9-year-old son. And I think it's essential. I love my family. I adore them. And, you know, I put a lot of time and energy into being the best mum I can be. But sometimes you just want to run away screaming, don't you? Like quite often. And going to the horses is for me like my reset button. No matter what has happened or how I feel, I just go to the horses and sometimes just sit in their field or give them a hug and, you know, for half an hour, and then come back and feel like a completely different person. I think anything that feeds your passion is essential as a mum. It just fills you up again. And I always feel like I can be a better mum if I just spend, you know, half an hour a day with the horses.
I've got a really good comment here that I have taken off my Facebook page from Shona Drummond, and she says that often you see mums who give up riding themselves to put their 2, 3 or 4-year-old on a pony. Don't. Keep riding yourself for your mental and physical health and for the mental and physical health of your child. Smaller children are quite happy to have a plod around the paddock on mum's horse. Until they're 7 or 8 years, children can't compartmentalise fear from a fall, so one fall will cause fear for riding in general. Small children also don't need to bounce around at a fast trot with a heavy helmet causing stress up and down their spine. Let small children be small children. But I think it's got a really good sentiment in there about like not having to give everything up for your kids, basically.
Yeah, I reckon that's really good. And yeah, I think that your thing, whether it's horse riding, like what you said before, I love that mini psychological survey that you did. I thought that was really cool. And the fact that the parents had something that meant a lot to them and it gave them their own sense of identity, which is a really big thing with mothers these days and fathers, you know, parents in general. And that's what horses are to me. And my husband, Sam, he's always going, don't feel guilty about going to the paddock. When you're there, be there. Don't think about us. And he's like, this is your thing. This makes you happy. And it is the thing that's gotten me through to this point without going to the mental institution. I've nearly been there a few times. But like to have my thing, to have an hour where I give myself, I go spend time with my horse every day and then come home and I'm a bit more refreshed. But yeah, with that comment, I think that it's okay to have a thing that's your thing and not to make your kids want to be a part of it if it's not theirs.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
agree. Yeah, I agree.
What's the biggest help to you at the moment, Ellie, that you find? Like, are you getting time in the day for horsing, or is that too much of an ask right now?
Yeah, I'm really, really lucky and blessed that going into this, my partner and I decided that we both wanted to be working from home, that we could support each other. So I've had time in my day that I can I had a client horse in for a couple of weeks. So that was really awesome for my mental space. And Dean said to me, "You need to be riding."
Yeah.
And so I don't know if that was a compliment or not.
It's totally a compliment.
Yeah, I'm taking it as that. So whether it is a client horse or if I get to, even if I, like the other night, it must have been about 5:00, and it would have been so easy to be like, oh no, like it's the end of the day, I should be doing the stuff inside or whatever. But instead I thought, no, I'm going to strap him onto me, I'm going to court the horse, and we did 10-15 minutes of groundwork. And even just getting that tiny little bit of time to go and do something for me, and like, I think those are the things that get me through.
Yeah. One of the things that having kids has really highlighted for me was the benefits of small amounts of time. If you can grab them, they can become so valuable, because I used to have the luxury, as we all did, of just endless amounts of time spreading out into the horizon, and I wonder what I ever did with it. But now, and you'd think, okay, well, I would wait until I've got a block of time to do some proper work. And now I recognize that proper work, in inverted commas, can exist in small chunks. Like, you can get so much done if you're really focused and just get out there and do it. It certainly cuts the procrastination.
Yeah, I think that's so true, isn't it? Those small little bits of time and just deciding, just doing it, and not putting things off until, like you say, to have that big chunk of time, because often those things don't come along, or if they do, then the baby wakes up, or there's always something that gets in the way.
Yeah, it's really interesting, because I had quite a few people advise me on different ways that I could ride in the company of Flynn or Tommy, like to set up little things on the side of the arena, or to leave them, X, Y, and Z, and obviously all safe situations. I'll just put that out there. But I had this vision, like, if I was to do that with my children, I would literally be calling search and rescue. Like, they would be off for the hills, or something would happen that would not be a relaxing experience. I definitely don't have the type of children I can just park by the side of the arena and they make daisy chains. Like, that just doesn't happen with my children.
Wasn't an option.
No, I think the only riding I would be doing is galloping after them, trying to catch up with them. So
well, that's fitness training.
It is, yeah. It's still riding. Can't be picky.
It's like learning how to rope a cow. You can just
Exactly. I get really good at lassoing really fast. I've got another comment from Bryn, who was in the Joyride group, and she said something which I think is pertinent to many of us, which is, while she was pregnant, that she tried to convince herself that she could do it all, that she believed that she could maintain the same level of doing her passion while cutting around this tiny human. And she also expected her husband to better understand how important 15 minutes baby-free with her horses would be. And she expected to feel more comfortable calling on other people to watch the baby. And that is a really interesting phenomenon that comes up, isn't it? That we do go into it with preconceived expectations about what it might look like. And this isn't anyone's fault. I think everyone does this. And we can also be quite cross when people don't pick up on our expectations subliminally, even if we haven't actually expressed them. So that communication channel and it comes back to that asking for help early, frequently, and kindly. If you do get to that point where you're building up a level of resentment, and I'm not saying this is what Bryn's feeling, but just generally, like, if you're feeling resentful or not heard, or that too much is falling on your shoulders, and it builds to a point where it becomes a thing in your relationship or with other people, it is such a talent to be able to step back when you recognise that early sign of, I don't feel good about this, or this is too much, to ask for help, instead of it getting to like an explosion point where things feel much bigger than they had to be.
Yeah, it can get to that overwhelm area.
Yeah.
That's when it gets messy.
Yeah.
Anxiety can start to kick in, and it's a pretty scary path to go down.
The itty bitty shitty committee.
Oh, damn that itty bitty shit.
They're rampant.
Oh,
Maybe
dear.
it's kind of about having awareness about that you could get drawn down that path beforehand, and having a plan of what you're going to do so that you don't get to that not so nice place.
Yeah, absolutely. The awareness is so key. I wrote a list, and I still write a list of things that I do that don't actually require me. And there is so much that we do that we specifically don't have to be the ones that do. Like in the early stages of mumhood, you know, if you're breastfeeding, obviously there's things which are intrinsic to the mum, but further along, there actually are a whole lot of things which we don't have to do. And what I've noticed, just being in the privileged position of working with lots of women, is that we get really focused on the things that actually aren't important. And sometimes that comes from fear procrastination, you know, because there is that other thing of a hyper awareness. I don't even know if that's the right word, but fears which perhaps we didn't experience prior to having children come to the surface, like the fear of being hurt, the fear of getting out there and something happening with our horses, and the what ifs. You know, they can become really magnified at these times. And if they aren't addressed or contextualized in the right way, we can hide behind things that need to be done in the house, or things that our kids perhaps need that actually would be fine to be left. You know, we could actually remove ourselves and get out there and do it. So there is that, I don't want to say martyrdom, but it is a kind of a good word. We can martyr ourselves to the system, hiding behind kind of these concerns. And I think it's really important to be aware that if you are feeling overwhelmed, like have a look at what you're doing on the day-to-day. And often it's not so much about the overwhelm as it is that you aren't doing things that actually sustain and nurture you. You're doing things which aren't important, which are taking up lots of time, but actually could be delegated. And sometimes it's a control issue on our part. I know I've dealt with this, that, you know, somebody might not do something the way exactly that you do it, but it will still get done, and that's totally fine. If you just let it go, you know, you could actually free up time to do other things. Not always the case, but just to keep in mind.
Yeah, I think that's definitely very common with mothers.
Yeah.
Stay-at-home mothers that run the household during the day, and then if, you know, the husband comes home and does the dishes but doesn't pack the dishwasher the right way, you can be like, that's not how it's done, and get caught up. But in the end, the dishwasher's actually been packed and you didn't have to do it. So victory dance.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah, just letting go of the unimportant things that just don't matter, and making sure, as something I talked about in Joyride today, which is looking at the things which are important to you. And I've fortunately got a really clear idea of the things that are important to me, which doesn't involve anything to do with domestic duties. And never has, really. But, you know, spending time with my horses, loving on my family, doing my work, and looking after myself and learning, those are basically like the 5 blocks, which if I consistently have those in my day, I feel really good about life. And there's so much superfluous stuff which we can use to make ourselves procrastinate busy or fill up our time. And it can happen in little increments that you don't even know it, that are stopping the other things getting in. And that can be as draining as doing the other stuff, like not doing enough that actually nourishes and sustains you in the way that you would like it to be.
Hi Jane, this is Jess McLaren from Toowoomba in Queensland. I am very new to this, as you know. I have a almost 3-week-old baby, my first baby, and this was an issue that concerned me before, or once I found out I was pregnant, and I'm trying to plan. I think that I have had expectations that I will soon find out are probably not super reasonable, that, you know, I'll be able to go down with the front pack on and go about do everything, that I'll be able to just, you know, pop him in a porta cot and he can sleep while I ride. I have been very aware also of feelings of anxiety coming back when I return to riding, so I've put in place some things to try and mitigate that. So my horse Essie is going away to a beautiful trainer who uses clicker and positive reinforcement for 4 weeks, or 2 to 4 weeks. She'll go next in a week's time and spend time with her being brought back into work. And we were up to going out and about, so that's what the trainer's going to work on, taking her out and about, getting her familiar with new places, and I thought that maybe I can go down and do my first ride with the trainer, and then she'll be back to me by the time I'm 6 to 8 weeks after having baby, and I should be ready to get back into riding physically, and I'll be doing your comeback pathway to try and come back and return from riding without feelings of anxiety. So yes, I am just starting on the journey, and I'm documenting it on a blog because I'm hoping that what I experience might help somebody else, but also just help me to be able to go back and look at the process and sort of assess where I can do things, maybe change some things or change my expectations to manage things better.
There's an interesting thing about guilt as well, that guilt comes when you are defying your own rules about how you think something should be. So if you feel guilty about going outside and spending time with your horses, for instance, it's because you have predefined and largely unconscious rules about what it means to be a good mum. And sometimes they are completely, or often they are completely illogical, and they are conditioned, meaning that, you know, we haven't actually created them for ourselves. They are something that we've picked up as a result of how we've been parented or what's happened down the line. So to me, I did think about what it meant to be a good mum, and that meant that I was present in the times we were together and we had quality time together and all of those, you know, other bits which make a really nice, connected, loving relationship. It doesn't mean that I'm like laying myself on the ground as some kind of sacrifice every day. And I also want to be the type of mum that is pretty badass, you know, like, yeah, mum's out there rocking it. Like, look at her out there. And so that to me is really important, especially as the mum of boys. Like, I really want them to have like badass women as their role model and be like, yeah, look at that. So thinking about the rules that you have around things, you know, if you're feeling guilty about something, like why, what rules do you have around what it means to be X, Y, and Z? And sometimes, you know, we might have this rule about being a mum that, well, we have to be there 24/7 and we have to be the one that answers to all of their needs, and things which are totally unsustainable and not necessary and not necessarily that healthy either. So it is it's something to have a look at if guilt is like a thing that's currently emerging, which it tends to be.
It's always there.
Yeah.
I think another thing as a mum that's returning to riding is your body's not the same either.
Yeah.
You know, especially just after I had my baby, the trot was equivalent to jumping on a trampoline. And the pelvic floors aren't what they used to be. So, and, you know, also I had 4 fingers separation in my abdominal muscles.
Mm-hmm.
And my core's not as strong as it used to be as well. And, you know, I think we need to give ourselves a break in, you know, our performance as well, that it's not going to bounce back straight away, and that's okay.
Yeah, I'll tell you a funny story that's not horse riding related, but I think we'll be able to resonate with. I took my eldest child, Flynn, to Taekwondo, and he wanted me to participate with him. And I just had Tommy. I was like maybe 10 weeks past having Tommy. And so everyone dropped to the ground and was doing sit-up. And I literally could just lift my head off the ground. Like, I had no abdominal muscles or the ability to contract them at all. And one of the instructors came down and lay next to me, like he was trying to be really supportive. And he was guiding me through how to do a push-up. And I turned and looked at him and I was like, I've just had a baby. And he was like, okay, you'll be fine. And he just wandered off, and it was quite funny.
Slowly back away.
Yeah. Step away from the lady who can't do crunches currently. I will be back in a year and crunch you into oblivion. Oh dear.
Hi Jane, it's Jo Rogers here talking about parenting and riding. So yes, it is difficult, and I think I never left any time or made any time for myself early on in the piece. I guess it was a lack of support a little bit as well, as in husband was at work and it was just me at home. But also, so I just kind of made time at any point during the day to go out and at least see the horses and try and do something and just hang with them. And then as everyone got older, tried to go for little bits of riding. It kind of married in with my guy getting older, so it sort of got harder to manage. But as the kids have got older, I didn't really want to be that parent who's like, you must have ponies. But yeah, we got a pony and they sort of slowly got more confident. And I actually really enjoy seeing them doing stuff with their horses, you know, their pony now. And finally, they've just got their act together, and both of them are keen on riding. So yeah, that's fine and fun. And but it is a real challenge, and I think getting the support that you're not just, you know, that guilty mummy thing of taking time out when the to-do list is massive is important, and hard for other people to realise when it has been just you doing everything for a little while. But as they get older, it is about carving out that time and, you know, knowing that they are okay doing their own thing for a little while. We're lucky where we live that it's quite freedom farming. They can kind of do their own thing while I do stuff, which is nice. So yeah, feeling brave enough to allow yourself that time, which I think I'm getting better at. And now with Blondie, it's okay, you know, knowing that it's okay to have your time with your horse, and you're better for it, not worse.
So thinking about if we swing it around and think about from our perspective, because I know there's so many variables in between, you know, what can happen in terms of health of baby, health of mum, everything in between coming back to it. But if we were to think about returning to riding, what would be your advice, Sarah? What's been important for you? I mean, I'm sure it's something you're still in the midst of negotiating.
Yeah, definitely. So I would say ask for help when you need it. Don't expect to know everything or be able to do everything straight away. I've got, you know, I go and get lessons if I need help. Take it slowly as well. Don't try and rush it and be back to where you were when you found out you were pregnant, because the horse probably isn't fit either, and it would be beneficial for their body to be able to go slowly. And just be kind to yourself. Like, if you just need to be kind to yourself and don't have these really high expectations. I can't remember who it was, but they say trade expectations for appreciation. And then I think you'll find yourself a lot happier and not be so tough on yourself.
Yeah, beautiful. What about you, Ellie?
I had these grand plans of popping the baby out. I was going to bring my 3 horses back into.
Well, you tick that one off. Pop the baby out. Tick.
Yeah. Baby out. So I would have some client horses back in, and I'd bite off a little bit more than I can chew. So that has been a good learning for me as well, and being gentle on myself. It's okay that you can't be riding 3 horses right now. So this week I had to do some serious thinking about it and make some decisions about what horses I was going to work and which ones I was going to turn out, and being okay with that and knowing that they're actually okay.
Yeah.
They don't mind, and I think as long as I get that little bit of time to be able to still have them in my life, because they are me, and being okay with not being able to do as much as I thought I would have been able to do.
Yeah, I love that. It's what I've found, and I don't know what you guys think to this, but it's only retrospectively often that we're able to really put things in perspective. And from my position of sitting here and listening to you, Ellie, I'm like, wow, your baby's 6 weeks old. It's amazing what you are doing, you know, really. But when you're in the midst of it, like, I remember being so hard on myself about not doing more and even robbing myself of some enjoyment of the day and of the moment based on that idea of dissatisfaction or frustration that I wasn't able to kind of get more out of myself, if you like. And yeah, I so agree with that, like being kind to yourself. And I am a real advocate of fiercely protecting what you're passionate about. I think that, you know, that's as important as anything else. And the framework that I've always operated from is that usually it's the time frames that we need to let go of. It's not the actual passion, you know, and we don't have very many public models of what it's like to coordinate babies and riding that aren't at a high level and have nannies available or lots of help, which is of the 24/7 variety. And so when you do see people jumping on and competing at like international events shortly after having a baby, it can be a hard pill to swallow if you're there like trying to get out to actually feed your horses, and that's some kind of win, let alone ride them. So yeah, I think I so appreciate you guys coming on and chatting about it in the way that you have. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having us. It's been really good. It's been a great discussion. I really think that, you know, a lot of mums are going to benefit from this, and just knowing they're not alone.
Yeah, that's the thing, huh? And that it is it can be amazing and tough all at once, and it is for all of us. Yeah, and that it gets easier, definitely, as well. So the other thing to mention about you both, because you have so many excellent things going on, is that if people want to become virtual friends with you online, where can they find you? Where can they find you, Sarah? How can they listen to your podcast?
We've only just got it on iTunes, so you can listen to it through iTunes or Spotify, or I've got a Facebook as well, Facebook page.
Happy Horse and Happy Hound? Is that
Happy Horse, Happy Hound. Yep, that's
Sorry,
it.
Happy Horse, Happy Hound.
I know, it's a bit of a mouthful.
No, it's perfect. And I'll link to it in the show notes as well. So if you want to get the direct link, you can jump back on my website and find it there. So exciting. And how about you, Ellie?
Our podcast is called Working from the Inside Out, which is pretty cool. We've talked to some amazing people, including you, Jane. And then Finesse Equestrian is our actual training page where you can drop us a line if you want to have a chat.
Awesome. Thank you so much, guys. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Jane.
That's it from us today. Thank you so much for hanging out. Thank you again to my awesome co-hosts for this episode, Ellie and Sarah. Ellie's podcast is Working from the Inside Out, and you can find her by visiting finesse-equestrian.com. Sarah's podcast is called Healthy Horse and Happy Hound. You can find that on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, and her Facebook page is facebook.com/Healthy Horse Happy Hound. I'll also be including those links on the show notes on my website. As for me, you can find me by visiting confidentrider.online, and all the details about my membership program Joyride are there also. Have a wonderful day, and I'll talk to you next week.